The air in the lower levels of Vex Prime Station tasted like rust and fear. Captain Deho walked through the narrow corridors with careful steps. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, his crew members, Sumin and Tawan, stayed close. They did not like this place. Vex Prime was known across the galaxy as a trading hub. Ships came here from hundreds of different worlds. Most of the business happened in the bright upper levels, where merchants sold food, tools, and technology. But down here in the dark, other things were bought and sold. Things that decent people did not talk about. Deho had come here to buy engine parts for his ship. The Serenity's Edge needed repairs before they could continue their journey. He knew the best prices were found in the lower markets. He had not expected to find this. A crowd of alien beings stood around a raised platform. Their voices mixed together in a dozen different languages. Some looked like giant insects, others had scales like snakes. A few had too many arms or eyes that glowed in the dark. They were all watching something on the platform. Deho pushed through the crowd to get a better look. What saw made his blood turn cold. Children stood on the platform in chains. Teens, not human children, but children all the same. They were small and scared. Their eyes were wide with fear. Some were crying quietly. Others just stared at nothing, like they had given up hope. At the front of the group was the smallest one. She looked like she was maybe 8 years old. Her skin was blue and seemed to glow with a soft light. She had large eyes that were purple like deep space. Tears ran down her face as she looked out at the crowd of buyers. This was Zyla, though. Deho did not know her name yet. She was a Catherian, a species known for being gentle and kind. Her people could feel the emotions of others. Right now, she could feel the hunger and greed of everyone watching her. It made her small body shake with fear. The chains around her wrists and ankles were not made of metal. They were made of energy that glowed red. Every time she moved too much, the chains would shock her with pain. She had learned to stand very still. A tall creature stepped onto the platform. It looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. Its scales were dark green, and its eyes were yellow like a snake. This was Vexith, the auctioneer. He owned this market and dozens of others across the sector. Welcome, valued customers, Vext said in the common trade language. His voice was cold and harsh. Today, we have fine specimens from across the galaxy. Young, healthy, and already broken in for easy handling. The crowd pressed closer. Some of them held small devices that would let them bid without speaking. Others just raised their hands or made clicking sounds with their mouths. Deho felt sick. He had heard that slavery still existed in some parts of the galaxy, but seeing it was different. These were not adults who might have chosen their fate. These were children who had been taken from their homes and families. Sir Sumin whispered behind him. We should go. Okay, this is not our business. Tawan nodded. The locals would not like us interfering. Humans already have a bad reputation out here. Deho knew they were right. Humans were called Deathworlders by most alien species. Earth was considered one of the most dangerous planets in known space. Everything there tried to kill everything else. The fact that humans had survived and thrived made other species nervous. They thought humans were too violent, too unpredictable. Most of the time, Deho tried to prove them wrong. He was polite in his business dealings. He followed local laws and customs. He wanted other species to see that humans could be civilized. But right now, watching a small blue child crying in energy chains, he felt the old instincts stirring. The same instincts that had helped his species survive on a world full of predators and disasters. First item, Vexed H announced. Young Catherian female. Age approximately 8 standard cycles. Excellent empathic abilities. It's perfect for entertainment or emotional service. The bidding started at once. Hands went up around the platform. Numbers flashed on small screens. The price climbed higher and higher. Little Zila tried to step backward, but the energy change shocked her. She cried out and fell to her knees. The crowd laughed at her pain. Some of them seemed to like seeing her suffer. Daeho's hands slowly closed into fists. His heart was beating faster. He could feel heat rising in his chest and spreading to his arms and legs. This was how humans felt when they were about to fight. When they were about to become the monsters that other species feared. Empathic connection makes them very responsive to training. Vexed H continued. She will know exactly what you want before you even ask. More laughter from the crowd. More bids. The price kept going up. Zyla looked directly at Daeho through her tears. Maybe it was her empathic abilities, or maybe she just sensed something different about him, but she seemed to be asking him for help without words. Sir, Suman said again, more urgently this time, we need to leave. Now, she could see the change in her captain. All humans looked dangerous when they were angry, but Daeho was former. Military. He had fought in the border wars against the hegemony. He knew how to kill things, and right now he looked like he was thinking about it. Taewon put his hand on Daeho's shoulder. There are too many of them. The station security will stop us before we can do anything. But Daeho was not listening anymore. He was watching Zila try to wipe her tears with hands that were locked in energy shackles. He was thinking about his own daughter back on Earth, safe and happy and free. The bidding was almost over. Someone would buy this child in the next few minutes, okay? They would take her away to a life of slavery and suffering, and everyone would pretend it was normal, because that was how things worked in this part of space. Going once, Vexed H called out. 40 seconds. That was how long it took for Captain Daeho to stop being a civilized trader and become something much more dangerous. The Deathworlder was about to show them why humans were feared across the galaxy. Time seemed to slow down for Captain Daeho as he watched the little blue girl fall to her knees again. The energy chains around her small wrists sparked and made her cry out in pain. The crowd of alien buyers laughed and cheered like it was some kind of show. Something deep inside Daeho snapped. Going twice, Vexus announced from the platform. His yellow eyes gleamed with greed as he watched the bidding numbers climb higher on his screen. Hugh-O appeared at Daeho's side. The tactical officer had been looking for engine parts in another section of the market. He took one look at his captain's face and knew trouble was coming. Captain, Hyan Wu said quietly, whatever you were thinking, don't do it. We are outnumbered 50-1 down here. Daeho did not answer. His eyes were locked on little Zyla. She had stopped crying now, but only because she was too weak to make any more tears. Her small body was shaking from the pain of the energy chains. Please, sir, Sumin whispered. Think about the crew. Think about your ship. If we start a fight here, we will never leave this station alive. But Daeho was already moving. The first guard never saw him coming. One moment, the reptilian creature was watching the crowd, and the next moment, he was unconscious on the floor. Daeho had moved faster than most alien eyes could follow. His military training had kicked in, and decades of combat experience guided his actions. The second guard started to raise his weapon, but Taewon was already there. The security chief had served with Daeho in the border wars. When his captain moved, he moved too. His fist connected with the guard's jaw, and the alien dropped like a stone. Jihai Daeho spoke into his communicator without taking his eyes off the platform. Jam all communications in this sector. Now, it's back on the ship. Jihai's fingers flew over her control panels. She had been monitoring station traffic when her captain's order came through. Within seconds, every communication device in the lower market went dead. No one could call for help. The crowd was starting to notice that something was wrong. Alien heads turned as they saw the guards falling. Panic began to spread through the buyers as they realized humans were attacking. Daeho continued. Target the station's security network. Take down their surveillance and alarm systems. The weapons officer was already working. His console showed dozens of targets as he hacked into the station's computer network. One by one, security cameras went dark and alarm systems shut down. Vexed, finally understood what was happening. The tall lizard hissed in anger and reached for a control device on his belt. If he pressed it, the energy chains would deliver a fatal shock to all the slaves at once. He would rather kill them than lose them, but Daeho was already climbing onto the platform. He moved with deadly grace, like a predator stalking prey. Every alien in the market had heard stories about Deathworlders. Seeing one in action was terrifying. The auctioneer tried to press the button, but Daeho's hand closed around his wrist. The human's grip was strong enough to crack bone. H screamed as the device fell from his claws. Sua, Daeho said into his communicator while holding the struggling alien. I need you to override some energy restraints. Can you do it? From the ship. The chief engineer's voice crackled through the speaker. I can try, Captain, but I'll need a direct connection to their power source. Daeho looked around the platform. Behind the auction stage, he could see thick power cables running into the wall. They fed energy to the restraint system that kept the slaves under control. Wu, he called to his tactical officer. Clear me a path to those power cables. Wu nodded and pulled out his sidearm. He fired 3 quick shots that sent buyers scattering for cover. The energy bolts burned holes in the metal walls and filled the air with smoke. More guards were coming now. They poured into the market from side corridors and upper walkways. Some carried energy weapons, others had shock sticks or nets. They all looked very angry, but they had never fought humans before. Taewon and Hyanwu moved like a team. They had fought together in a dozen battles across 3 star systems. Each one knew where the other would be before they moved. Their weapons. Fire was precise and deadly. Guards fell with every shot. Daeho reached the power cables and tore away the protective covering with his bare hands. Sparks flew as he exposed the main energy conduits. His hands should have been burned by the electrical current, but human skin was tougher than most aliens realized. Young-Soo, he called. I have your connection. The engineer worked his magic from the ship's computer. Complex calculations flowed across his screen as he traced the power flow through the station's systems. The energy restraints used a specific frequency that could be disrupted if he could just find the right harmonic pattern. On the platform, little Zila felt the chains around her wrists begin to flicker. The red glow was becoming unstable. She looked up at the tall human who was fighting to save her and felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The other slave children saw it too. The energy bonds that had held them prisoner were failing. Some of them started to move toward the edge of the platform, away from their captors. Got it, Young-Soo announced over the communicator. Every energy restraint in the market went dark at the same time. Dozens of slave children suddenly found themselves free for the first time in years. Some of them ran. Others just stood there, not sure what to do with their freedom. Daeho turned to face Zyla. The little Catharian girl was rubbing her wrists where the chains had been. Her purple eyes were wide with wonder as she looked at him. It's okay, he said softly in broken Catharian. He knelt down so he would not seem so tall and scary. You are safe now. But even as he spoke, more guards were entering the market. Station security was finally responding to the attack. Alarms that Minho had not been able to disable were sounding in other parts of the station. Captain Suman's voice came through his communicator. We have company coming. A lot of company. Daeho picked up Zyla gently. She was so small and light that he could carry her easily. The other freed children were gathering around them, looking to the humans for protection. All crew, Deho said into his communicator. Time to go. Head for the ship. The battle for the lower market was just beginning, but in 40 seconds, one human's fury had torn apart a slave operation that had existed for decades. The Deathworlders were showing the galaxy exactly why they were feared. Captain Deho carried little Zyla in his arms as his crew fought their way through the lower market. The freed slave children followed behind them, staying close to the humans who had saved them. Energy bolts flew through the air as more stationed. Guards arrived to stop their escape. This way, Tawan shouted, pointing toward a corridor that led back to the upper levels. The docking bay is through there. But as they reached the entrance, heavy blast doors slammed shut in front of them. Red warning lights flashed along the walls, and a mechanical voice began speaking in the station's primary language. What is it saying? Deho asked. HFY listened to her translation device. Emergency lockdown protocol. All sections sealed. No one gets in or out. Hien Wu checked his scanner. Captain, we have bigger problems. I am reading at least 200 security personnel moving toward our position. They are trying to trap us down here. Deho looked around the chamber they were in. The walls were made of some kind of ancient metal that looked much older than the rest of the station. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, and they seemed to glow with their own light. Where are we? He asked Sumin. The navigation officer checked her portable scanner. According to the station maps, this is called the gate chamber. It was here when they built the station around it. Some kind of old alien technology. At the far end of the chamber stood a massive circular structure. It was at least 20 meters tall and made of the same strange metal as the walls. The center was filled with swirling energy that moved like liquid light. This was the dimensional gate that the slave market had been built around. Young Su stared at the ancient device with wonder. Captain, this is incredible. This gate technology is thousands of years old, maybe tens of thousands. No one knows how it works. Can we use it to escape? Deho asked. The engineer shook his head. The control systems are completely alien. It would take years just to understand the basic principles. Behind them, the sound of cutting tools echoed through the chamber. The station guards were working to break through the blast doors. They would be inside within minutes. Little Zyla stirred in Deho's arms. She had been quiet since he picked her up, but now she was looking at the gate with her large purple eyes. Her empathic abilities were telling her something important. It hurts, she whispered in her own language. Deho did not understand her words, but he could see the fear in her face. What hurts, little one? Zyla pointed at the gate. The light. It is screaming. None of the humans could hear what she was talking about, but her empathic senses were much stronger than theirs. She could feel the pain and anger trapped inside the gate's energy field. Something was very wrong with the ancient machine. The blast doors behind them began to buckle under the cutting tools. Sparks flew as the guards worked to break through. They would be inside the chamber in less than a minute. Captain Minho called from his position near the entrance. We need options. I count 50 guards with heavy weapons on the other side of that door. Deho studied the gate more carefully. The energy field in the center was not stable. It flickered and pulsed like it was fighting against something. The ancient symbols on the frame were glowing brighter now, as if responding to the presence of so many people. Young Su, he said suddenly. You said no one understands how this technology works. But what if we don't need to understand it? What if we just need to break it? The engineer looked horrified. Captain, we have no idea what would happen if we damaged a dimensional gate. It could destroy the entire station. It could tear a hole in space itself. Or it could give us a way out, Deho replied. He gently set Zyla down near Sumin, making sure she was safe. These gates were built by a species that disappeared long ago. Maybe there is a reason they are gone. The blast doors finally gave way. Station guards poured into the chamber with weapons raised. Their leader, an insect-like creature with 4 arms, began shouting orders in multiple languages. Surrender. Stolen property, the guard captain demanded. Return the slaves, and you will only face minor punishment. Keho stepped forward to face them. Behind him, his crew formed a protective circle around the freed children. Tozila watched from beside Sumin, her empathic abilities telling her that something big was about to happen. These children are not property, Deho said clearly. They are people, and no one is taking them back to chains. The guard captain laughed. Foolish Deathworlder. You were surrounded and outnumbered. Your reputation means nothing here. But Deho was not looking at the guards anymore. He was studying the gate's control panel, trying to understand its alien design. His military training had taught him to think quickly under pressure. He had also learned that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to break it completely. The energy field in the gate center pulsed brighter. The ancient symbols on the frame began to flash in sequence, as if some kind of countdown had started. Whatever the gate was designed to contain, it was becoming unstable. Young Sudeho called without turning around. If I overload the gate's power system, what would happen to the containment field? The engineer's eyes went wide with understanding. Captain, you cannot be serious. The containment field fails. The dimensional energy would be released all at once. The explosion would be massive. But would it create an opening? Did quick calculations in his head. Yes, but the energy release would also destroy everything within a kilometer radius. We would never survive. Deho smiled grimly. That depends on timing. He pulled out his sidearm and aimed it at the gate's main power coupling. The weapon's energy beam could overload the ancient circuits if he hit them in exactly the right spot. Wait, the guard captain shouted. You will kill us all. Maybe, Deho agreed. Or maybe I would just show you why humans are called Deathworlders. He fired. The energy beam struck the power coupling and sent feedback surging through the gates. Systems. Ancient circuits that had operated perfectly for thousands of years suddenly found themselves carrying 10 times their normal load. Warning symbols flashed across the control panel as safety systems tried to compensate. The containment field holding the dimensional energy began to flicker and fail. The swirling light in the gate center grew brighter and more violent. A low, humming sound filled the chamber as reality itself began to strain. Little Zila pressed her hands to her ears as the psychic screaming from the gate grew louder. Her empathic abilities were being overwhelmed by the pain and rage of whatever had been trapped inside the dimensional prison. Everybody down, Deho shouted. The ancient gate exploded outward in a burst of light, an energy that tore through the chamber like a storm. The blast doors were vaporized instantly. Half the station guards were thrown against the walls by the force wave. Emergency power systems throughout the station flickered and died. When the light faded, a gaping hole had been torn in the side of the chamber. Beyond it lay open space and freedom. But the explosion had done more than just create an exit. It had released something that had been contained for millennia. Something that the gates builders had locked away for a very good reason. And now it was free. The explosion from the ancient gate left everyone in the chamber stunned and confused. Smoke filled the air, and emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Through the hole that Deho had torn in reality itself, stars could be seen, twinkling in the darkness of space. Captain Deho pulled himself to his feet and looked around for his crew. The blast had thrown everyone to the ground, but they were all moving. That was good. The station guards were not so lucky. Most of them were unconscious or too injured to fight. Sound off, Deho called to his team. Here, Taewon replied, helping Sumin stand up. She had a cut on her forehead, but seemed okay otherwise. Present, Hyan Wu answered. He was checking his weapon to make sure it still worked. "Jihai here, Captain," came the voice through his communicator. "That explosion knocked out half the station's power grid. Emergency systems are barely functioning." Console appeared from behind a piece of fallen debris. "I am alive, Captain, but I have never seen anything like what just happened. The energy readings were off every scale I know." Minho reporting. The weapons officer said, "The hole you created goes all the way through the station's outer hull. We have a direct path to space." Deho nodded and turned to look for the children they had rescued. Most of them were huddled together near where the blast doors used to be. They looked scared but unhurt. The explosion had been directed mostly toward the outer wall, away from where they were standing, but he could not see little Zyla anywhere. "Where is the Catherian girl?" he asked Sumain. The navigation officer pointed toward the remains of the gate. "She ran toward it right before the explosion. I tried to stop her, but she was too fast." Keho felt his heart stop. The area around the gate was the most dangerous place in the chamber. Whatever energy had been released was still crackling through the air like lightning. No one should be able to survive near it. He ran toward the destroyed gate, ignoring the warnings from his crew. The ancient metal frame was twisted and broken, but the base was still intact. And there, sitting in the middle of the wreckage, was Zyla. The little blue girl was glowing brighter than before. Her skin seemed to pulse with inner light, and her purple eyes had changed color. Now they were silver like starlight. She was not hurt, but she was definitely different. "Zyla," Deho called softly as he approached. "Are you okay, little one?" She looked up at him and smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile since the rescue began. The voices stopped screaming, she said in perfect trade language. Before, she had only spoken her own language, but now she seemed to understand everything. "What voices?" Deho asked as he knelt beside her. "The ones trapped in the light prison," Zyla explained. "They were angry and sad for so long. But now they are free, and they said, 'Thank you.'" Deho did not fully understand what she meant, but he could see that something important had happened. The explosion had not just destroyed the gate, it had changed Zyla in some fundamental way. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. She nodded and stood up. "I can do more than walk now. Can't feel everyone on the station. It's all their thoughts and feelings. It does not hurt anymore." Behind them, more station guards were arriving. These ones had better armor and heavier weapons. They also looked very angry about what had happened to their facility. "Humans," their leader shouted, "you have destroyed station property and stolen valuable merchandise. Surrender now or face the consequences." Deho stood up slowly and turned to face them. Little Zyla moved to stand beside him, her small hand slipping into his much larger one. She was not afraid anymore. "These children are not merchandise," Deho said clearly. "They are living beings with rights and feelings, and I am not giving them back to you." The guard leader raised his weapon. "Then you will die with them, Deathworlder." But before anyone could fire, Zyla stepped forward. His silver eyes began to glow even brighter than before. When she spoke, her voice carried strange harmonics that seemed to echo inside everyone's head. "You will not hurt the kind human," she said. "You will not hurt any of us ever again." Something happened to the guards then. Their weapons fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Their eyes went wide with fear as Zyla's enhanced empathic abilities washed over them. She was not attacking their minds, but she was showing them exactly how much pain and suffering they had caused over the years. Every child they had sold, every family they had torn apart, every moment of terror and despair in the slave markets, all of it flooded into their consciousness at once. Some of the guards fell to their knees, overwhelmed by guilt and shame. Others backed away in horror, finally understanding what they had been part of. The guard leader tried to speak, but no words came out. "I can make them forget," Zyla said to Deho. I can take away their memories and make them into better people. Teho looked down at the small girl whose hand was still in his. The power she had gained from the gate's destruction was incredible, but it came with terrible responsibility. No, he said gently. People have to choose to be better. You cannot force them to change. Sila nodded sadly. You are wise. That is why the voices in the gate trusted you to free them. Jenny's voice came through Deho's communicator. Captain, you need to get back to the ship. Station security is mobilizing everything they have. We count at least 5 armed patrol ships heading this way. Deho looked at the hole in the station's hull. It was large enough for people to pass through, but they would need spacesuits to survive in the vacuum beyond. And they still had to get all the freed children to safety. Young Su, he called to his engineer. How long until we can reach the ship? If we use emergency suits and move fast, maybe 10 minutes, Young Su replied. But Captain, there is something else. I am detecting a tracking device in the Catherian girl. If we take her with us, they will be able to follow us anywhere. Deho felt his blood turn cold. A tracking device meant that Zilla's original captors would never stop hunting her. Even if they escaped the station, she would never truly be free. He knelt down in front of Zyla and looked into her silver eyes. Little one, there is something inside you that bad people can use to find you. We can try to remove it, but it might be dangerous. Zyla touched his face with her small hand. Through her enhanced empathic abilities, she could feel his genuine concern and protectiveness. You will keep me safe, she said with complete confidence. I know because I can feel your heart. At that moment, Captain Deho made a promise that would change his life forever. No one will ever hurt you again, he said in broken Catherian. I swear it on my honor as a human being. The words seemed to hang in the air with unusual weight. Little Zyla smiled and hugged him tightly. Around them, the other freed children gathered close, sensing that something important had just happened. They were no longer just refugees fleeing slavery. They were now under the protection of a Deathworlder who had just sworn a sacred oath, and in the galaxy's long history, there were few things more dangerous than a human who had given his word to protect someone. The real adventure was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the gate on Vex Prime Station. Captain Deho and his crew had become legends in some parts of the galaxy and wanted criminals in others. Their faces appeared on bounty boards from the core world. To the outer rim, the Serenity's edge drifted quietly through an asteroid field in the neutral zone. It was one of the few places they could hide without being detected by either government patrol ships or bounty hunters. But hiding was becoming harder every day. Little Zyla sat in the ship's common room, her silver eyes focused on a datapad. She was reading stories about Earth, trying to understand the world that had produced her protector. Her blue skin still glowed with the inner light she had gained from the gate, but she looked healthier and happier than when they first found her. Captain, she called as Deho walked past. This story says humans used to fight wars over who could own other people. But you saved me and the other children. How can the same species do both things? Deho sat down beside her. For the past months, he had become like a father to the small Catherian girl. People are complicated, Zyla. We can choose to be good or bad. Sometimes we choose wrong, but we can always try to do better. Is that why you helped us? She asked. To make up for the bad things other humans did. Deho said honestly, I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes that is reason enough. Jine appeared in the doorway. The ship's medic looked worried. Captain, we have a problem. I've been monitoring galactic news feeds, and there are reports of a massive slave convoy heading through the Kepler sector. They are carrying over 300 children. Deho felt his jaw tighten. How many ships? At least 20 armed vessels, Janae replied. It is the largest operation we have seen since Vex Prime. And Captain, the convoy is being led by someone who calls himself the Collector. He has put a personal bounty on our heads for destroying his market. Yunji joined the conversation. First officer had been Daeho's friend for many years, and she could read his expressions better than anyone. Captain, I know what you are thinking, okay? But we cannot take on 20 ships with just the Serenity's edge. We could call for help, Haywon suggested. The pilot had been checking star charts at the navigation station. There is a galactic council. Patrol base 2 days away. If we send them the convoy's location, they could intercept it. Daeho shook his head. 2 days is too long. By then, the convoy will have reached its destination, and those children will be sold and scattered across a dozen worlds. Young-Soo looked up from his engineering console. Captain, even if we could somehow disable their ships, we do not have space for 300 refugees. Our life support systems would fail within hours. The crew fell silent. They all wanted to help the children in the convoy, but the math was simple. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and had no way to rescue so many people at once. Little Zyla had been listening to the conversation with her enhanced empathic abilities. She could feel the frustration and helplessness of the crew. They wanted to do the right thing, but they did not see how it was possible. I have an idea, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. In the months since her rescue, Zyla had proven to be much smarter than her apparent age suggested. The energy from the ancient gate had not just enhanced her empathic abilities, it had also accelerated her mental development. What kind of idea? Daeho asked, gently. You said I could feel the emotions of everyone on a ship, Zyla explained. What if I could feel the emotions of everyone in the convoy, all the children, who were scared and alone? Nay looked concerned. Sela, using your abilities on that scale could be dangerous. We do not know what the limits are. But Zyla was already standing up. Her silver eyes were beginning to glow brighter. The voices from the gate taught me something before they left. They showed me how to share feelings across great distances. What do you mean? Sumin asked. I can take the fear and sadness of all those children and broadcast it, Sela said. I can make everyone in the sector feel what they feel. No one will be able to ignore their pain. Daeho began to understand. You want to create an empathic distress signal? Zila nodded. Every ship with a communications array will receive it. Every space station in Colony World. They will feel exactly what it is like to be a terrified child locked in chains. The idea was both brilliant and dangerous. If Zyla could project the emotions of 300 scared children across an entire star sector, the psychic scream would be impossible to ignore. But the effort might also burn out her enhanced abilities forever. Are you sure you want to do this? Daeho asked. It might hurt you. Zyla took his hand in both of hers. You promised that no one would ever hurt me again. But what about all the other children who have no one to protect them? Do they not deserve the same promise? Daeho felt tears coming to his eyes. This small alien girl had more courage and compassion than most adults he knew. Okay, he said. But we do it together. The whole crew. Over the next hour, they prepared for the most desperate rescue mission of their lives. Young-Soo modified the ship's communications array to amplify Zilla's empathic abilities. Hyen-Woo plotted an attack course that would bring them close to the convoy. Jin-Mei prepared medical supplies for both their crew and any rescued children. When they finally found the slave convoy, it was even larger than the reports had indicated. 23 armed ships surrounded a massive transport vessel that was big enough to hold thousands of people. The escort ships bristled with weapons and defensive shields. There, Zyla said, pointing at the transport. I can feel them, many scared little hearts. She closed her silver eyes and began to concentrate. Her skin started to glow brighter as she reached out with her enhanced abilities. Slowly, Carefully, she touched the minds of every child in the convoy. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. A wave of pure emotion burst from the Serenity's edge and spread outward at the speed of light. Every ship, station, colony world within 50 light years suddenly felt the terror and despair of 300 enslaved children. The psychic scream was so powerful that it overwhelmed communication arrays and caused strong empaths to collapse. On nearby patrol ships, hardened military officers found themselves weeping as they experienced what it felt like to be torn from their families. Space stations that had ignored the slave trade for decades suddenly sent emergency response teams. Even the Galactic Council, normally slow to act, dispatched their fastest ships to investigate. The convoy's escort ships found their crews unable to function as the empathic wave hit them. Some ships lost power as their crews became overwhelmed with grief and shame. Others simply stopped moving as their pilots realized what they had been protecting. When the council ships arrived 3 hours later, they found the entire convoy surrendered without a fight. The children were freed. The slavers were arrested. New laws were passed to prevent such operations from ever happening again. But the victory came with a price. Little Zyla collapsed after sending the empathic distress signal. Her silver eyes returned to their original purple, and the glow faded from her skin. She had used up most of the power she had gained from the ancient gate. "Was it worth it?" Deho asked as she recovered in the medical bay. Zyla smiled weakly. "Can't still feel some of them. The children we saved. They're happy now. They will go home to their families." "And you?" Deho asked. "Where is your home?" Sila took his hand. "Here, with you and the crew. We are family now." Captain Deho realized that his promise to protect one small alien girl had led to something much larger. They had not just saved Zyla or the children in the convoy. They had changed how the galaxy thought about slavery and the rights of all sentient beings. Sometimes one act of compassion could change everything. And sometimes being the monster that other species feared was exactly what the universe needed. The Serenity's Edge set course for Earth, carrying a new family that had been forged in the fires of righteous anger and tempered by love. Behind them, the galaxy was already becoming a better place.